Greetings, my friends. I want to thank you all for subscribing. I want to thank all of my channel members for supporting me in this endeavor to save pop culture. And if you are not subscribed, please consider supporting this channel. We need you. Thank you. My friends, last week a longtime source reported to me that Kathleen Kennedy had made an appearance in the Disney offices. It was a hush-hush sort of affair that went under the radar, but not so far under the radar to elude my network of Hollywood spies, who notified me on Wednesday that she had personally been on campus for an alleged meeting with Bob Iger, and then the next day, Kennedy listed her Malibu home for sale. And a bunch of moving boxes were delivered to the Lucasfilm offices on Friday. What does all this mean? And what more information have we uncovered? Join me now for an update of the latest rumors from Lucasfilm with our friend and ally, Kamran Pasha. At this point, I must state that what we're about to tell you is information provided by sources and allies claiming knowledge of the situation, but since I cannot personally confirm any of this, I'm presenting it as unverified rumor, and I ask you to please take it with a grain of salt. Kamran, welcome to the show. It's great to see you, my friend.
It's always wonderful to be here, Doomcock, and as I've said many times, this is really the best channel in the fandom out there, and I'm honored that you give me a chance to come and talk with you, so thank you.
You're very welcome. I really appreciate you coming on, and it's very interesting. Once again, we have dovetailed in our sources. This last Tuesday or Wednesday, I received a message from a very long-time source saying that Kennedy is in the office having a high-level meeting with Iger, and at the time I kind of discounted it. It's like, well, maybe not. This is interesting. When I get things like this, I go ahead and I pause on it and just wait to see if any other developments tend to suggest that there's validity to this. And that came when you actually sent me a message linked to an article that Kathleen Kennedy was selling her home in Malibu. And at that point, 2 and 2 clicked together, and I went ahead and did a video. And then, within a few hours of that video going up, you had also confirmed through your source Sparrow that Kennedy was in the office. Is this correct? And what can you tell us about all this?
Yeah. Well, the interesting is it's not coming on to about 10 times in the last 2 or 3 months that you and I have coincided almost to the day where information comes out from we've confirmed we have independent line of sources, right? This particular thing, I'd received, like you got a call on Tuesday or Wednesday. I received a call on Friday morning before your video came out through what I call the backbone, through the network I've set up to allow Sparrow to communicate without getting caught, right? And so they contacted me on Friday morning with information that would end up paralleling your video, which came out maybe an hour or so after I got the call. And I didn't put it out in the morning because I was about to go to the Friday prayers at the mosque, right? And so I was like, all right, let me deal with this. I'll come back. And by the time I came back, I put it out, and right around the same time your video came out. So we've been both working on it for a bit. And so it wasn't like either of us had gotten it from the other. We each independently had developed it around the same time, right? So this is what I heard. So I heard a meeting. I didn't hear exactly the same thing. So let me share what I heard, right? And definitely Sparrow, my contact inside of Lucasfilm, says that there was a meeting. They was on a Tuesday, August 8th, right? One day before the earnings call, which it seems to fit into your timeline about when you received this message, right?
Right.
They didn't confirm any meeting with Iger, and they're not in a position to do that. So we can talk about whether there were 2 meetings, right? Because what they confirmed was that she had been in the office at the Lucasfilm office at the Presidio in the Bay Area and San Francisco area, right? And so she was there. And what was unusual is that, as we reported for some time now, she hasn't been allowed back on campus. And she even tried to come back on campus a couple of weeks ago and was denied access. But Sparrow said no. Apparently, she came in on Tuesday, and it was like Kissinger's shuttle diplomacy with communist China. Right? No one knew. Right? It was like even Kissinger at the White House. Most people in the White House didn't know what was going on. Right? And so she showed up, and immediately had a security person who had made the arrangements of essentially clear the halls, so that nobody would see her, right? It was the opposite of Vader, prepare for my arrival. It was like, prepare for her arrival, make sure nobody knows, right? and so so they prepared for her arrival. Apparently she showed up, was apparently led straight by the security minder. I mean, she had, it was literally like, you're a prisoner in your own office, right? The security minder led her straight to this meeting with the person that I call the Witch King of Burbank. Now, both of our sources have established Lucasfilm is essentially being managed right now by executives from Disney. Apparently, they originally were 5. There may be others now, but there was a 5-core group of people. Each is in charge of a department while she is mysteriously not around. And so the lead person of this group that I like to deem the Witch King of Burbank, right, was the person that she apparently met with. I don't believe Bob Iger came to Lucasfilm's offices. I think it was just her and this guy. So which we'll talk about in a moment is, I think there were 2 meetings. I actually think there were probably, I can't confirm that, but my instinct is you actually got right that there was a meeting with Mr. Iger, and I believe that happened. And then this was probably the follow-up meeting to that, right? After whatever.
Sure, yeah. It's also possible that it's just fog of war. They
heard a
Kennedy
meeting
was on. Kennedy had a high-level meeting. They assumed it was with Iger. I mean, I really don't know. I have no idea. It was a fairly sketchy. Just not a lot of detail in this. Just saying, hey, it's not and it wasn't like, hey, rumor is or word is. It was just flat out. Kennedy was in the office today, and she had a meeting with Iger, and then the source concluded. Putting together her exit package, ? So, and I was like, well, maybe. And then when the house sale thing came, that really opened my eyes. And I said, wow, now that is a very interesting piece of it.
And the timing on the house sale is, so this meeting apparently happened on Tuesday, and you heard about it Tuesday or Wednesday, right? So that makes sense. That time, that lines up.
Right.
It happened one day apparently before the earnings call, where Bob Iger got a little flustered. Actually, I heard the call. If you heard the call, he's doing it. They didn't have a great quarter, but he's trying to cover it up as usual. And at the very end, the very last question on that call was somebody said, "So what about all these rumors that you're going to sell to Apple or a technology company?" Like that bluntly, like some shareholder asked, right? And he got really like irritated and flustered, like he didn't want to talk about that, right? He's like, "I'm not going to speculate," and he's just like, "All right, well, cut off his mic," right? So that
what he did.
Yeah,
he didn't say cut off his mic.
I'm paraphrasing my friend.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure.
Actually emotional. No, let's clarify. He did not say those. Anyone can listen to the call. I'm sure it's a record of it. No, I'm saying is that his voice had that vibe of, I don't want to talk to this guy, right? Why am I being asked this?
Okay.
This puts me in an uncomfortable position, right? And because he didn't say, no, of course there's no talks. The people who say, we have no interest in selling our prosperous company. Here it's like, well, I'm not going to speculate on any possible talks, right? Okay. Whatever. So he had a rough day that day. That's the next day, right? And then so that's Wednesday. And then the day after that is Thursday, where one of my Patreon subscribers, I'm going to shout out by name, Stacy Ballard, wonderful, talked to him on the phone, great guy, really good sort of, Encyclopedia Brown is what I'm going to call him from now on, because he's one of these guys that just runs around and finds stuff that other people aren't noticing. And so there have been like a small listing in the Sacramento Bee. So I mean, the Sacramento Bee had mentioned, hey, here's this beautiful home in their real estate section, I guess, that's being put up, and that was on Thursday, the Malibu home of Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, and most people had just not noticed it. I hadn't noticed it. I mean, I'm out there following real estate, and so he's like, hey, did you see this thing? It just came out, and then we put it out there, and so again, it's a lot of coincidences, right? All these things are happening at once. And then suddenly she's putting her home up for sale. And let me clarify. Some people are saying, well, that could just be a normal transaction. She's a rich person. She probably has multiple properties. And that's perfectly true. It could indeed be just a normal transaction. You're selling this because you want to buy something else. You're tired of the place, right? Who knows, right? I personally think it's kind of, the timing set off a red alarm for me. Right. And it's just, and there's also a strange synchronicity to it, Doomcock, because another Patreon member looked into the history of it and said, hey, wait a minute, this house, she bought it in 2015, apparently for $8 million or $9 million, something like that. And now she's doubling her money. Good for her. But she must have bought it right off of the Force, Force Awakens money or bonus, whatever she got for the success of Force Awakens, right? And so
Right.
it would be quite ironic and synchronicitous if she ended up selling it at the end of her tenure at Lucasfilm. Like the house is her symbolic journey, right?
Yeah, that's possible. That's interesting. The whole thing is very interesting. But it just occurs to me, Cameron, I feel as if her selling this property, which is a beautiful property with, great views, I suspect that what this means is that she's leaving Hollywood. That is my gut feeling, because look, why not keep it? It's not like she's hurting for money. She's certainly not hurting for money. Why would she not keep it unless she was moving away from the Hollywood community? In other words, is she not going to entertain anymore? Is she not going to be active in Hollywood circles anymore? Is it going to be too painful? Is it going to be that she doesn't feel connected anymore? Is she a little alienated? I don't know. This is all speculation, but you'd think that you'd want to keep that beautiful property in your pocket.
Really lovely.
For Hollywood parties and another strategic base in Los Angeles area, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think?
That was my reaction. My initial reaction when I heard that is she's getting out of Dodge. That was my instinctive reaction.
Yeah, that's my feeling.
Yeah, she's getting out of Dodge because, at this stage in your life, some people said, well, maybe she's just retiring. I'm like, yeah, but these aren't normal people that retire to Boca Raton, right? I mean, what does retirement mean for people like this? They don't really retire. Hollywood don't really retire. I mean, not at that level. You're always like developing a new movie because you always want to be in the game, right? Robert Evans, one of the biggest producers from the 70s, huge guy, right? He was trying to make movies to the very end of his long life, right? That's what you do. You don't really retire. Actors retire because they don't get cast anymore, but producers, not really. They're always trying something new. It's kind of in their blood. So I was like, I don't know. Okay, and you hit the exact issue, Doomcock, which is your home is your business card in Hollywood. That's what it is, right? You invite people all the time over there. You schmooze, you hold parties, you hold court essentially. It's like a manor. And God bless, it's a beautiful house up at the hills of Malibu, right? I think it's got an incredible view. I mean, and that's the kind of place you would. So to give that up, I mean, maybe she's buying an even bigger, more expensive place. But I don't know if at this stage of your life you want to do that. It is possible. Right? Yeah, it is possible. Yeah. At this stage of your life, do you want to do that when you've got this thing, $18 million home in the Malibu Hills? I mean, that's the trophy in this industry, right? Right. Malibu especially 100%. There's two places that are considered very super exclusive that are pretty much the end of the journey real estate wise in Los Angeles. That's Bel Air and Malibu, right? The Fresh Prince of Bel Air is a reason. Bel Air is a very secluded community, but and often that's like old money, whereas Malibu tends to be Hollywood money, right? Because there's whole sections of the Malibu beach that are private, that movie stars own, that you're not allowed to go onto the beach in those areas, right? So it's not true here in Santa Monica. You got the background here, the beach is back there. It's all public, and there's like I think Kirk Douglas used to have a home not far from where I am, right on the beach. But you could go right up to his but you can't do that in Malibu. It's very private, and so to give that up is strange because there's not much better in terms of Hollywood power, symbol of power than that. So my initial reaction is she doesn't expect to have any more parties, and my emotional reaction to that, the image that flashed in my mind, Doomcock, is the image you talked about a lot, which is her being humiliated by Steven Spielberg in front of everyone, where she didn't get any accolades, and Frank Marshall. Remember, they're both selling this house. Marshall and Kennedy both embarrassed in public, and anyone who claims that's not what happened, just look at their body language, man. Look at their body language in that video when he passes over he praises everyone except them, and they're on stage with him. And Marshall's been there since the first movie. She's been there in the background since the first movie, like serving coffee or whatever. But she's been there, and you see the reaction of their body language. Frank Marshall, when he's like, and Steven Spielberg's like, and the person that's the glue that's held these movies together. Frank Marshall turns to the audience, just puffed out, head up, because he knows Disney executives there, Hollywood people there, and there's like, and it's Maestro John Williams, and you see his head flip like Regan from The Exorcist, right? It turns almost fully around. It's just like what? And he's like, and he's like, okay, And then Kathleen just standing there glowering with her hands like locked, like clap for the
Yes.
old man. So that's not normal. And the body language suggested what I think is linked to the house, that at that moment they were persona non grata in this town, right? And they
Right.
realized, well, what's the point of having this $18 million home with property taxes in Malibu? You're looking at what's the maintenance of that? We're looking at a few $100,000 a year just in just in property taxes, right? And then maintenance
Right.
of that place. If you're not going to get any, because again, it's not a home. It's a manor to establish your authority and to bring people to your court. If you're not getting anything out of that, what's the price of sustaining that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just not worth it, perhaps. But also, I mean, she wouldn't need to, if she wanted another house, she wouldn't need to sell this one either. I mean, they must, come on, after all, two successful careers in Hollywood, they're not hurting for money. They can't be hurting for money.
Unless, and this is pure speculation, 100% speculation. I'm just making it up. But it was scheduled. It was suggested by some of my Patreon members, and I don't think it's impossible unless they have a need for money. If Iger's like, you're gonna have to cover this hole from, let's say, The Acolyte on the books, right? You're gonna have to cover that, right? My Sparrow had reported some months back that whenever they do settle with Karen McCarthy, the producer who sued on The Acolyte, the mysterious Acolyte, that Sparrow had heard that Iger had said to her, you're going to pay the settlement out of your pocket.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember a few months ago. So, I mean, maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's some obligation she now has as part of her exit to make certain things whole that might require some immediate cash.
Interesting. It's really pure speculation at this point. We know nothing beyond what we have been told. But it is interesting, because Hollywood is a place of symbols, status symbols of power. And I think that having that house was a real symbol of her success. And also, I mean, the Kennedy Marshall Company is still extant, I believe. But does that mean that they're not going to be doing any business anymore? Or are they relocating to Canada where shooting is cheaper? I have no idea.
Well, I mean,
it's just a very strange development. It feels like a retreat to me. It feels like a retreat.
It does feel like a retreat. It does feel like a retreat. You hear about celebrities, selling their place in Florida and this and that all the time. You hear about that. There's something that struck me just on a visceral level. This wasn't what I would do if I had a beautiful Malibu home on the top of the hill that looked like a palace. This isn't what I would do at the this journey in my career. I just, again, who knows what's happening in their private lives and who knows what other economic issues or what other personal issues they're facing. I don't know. It just felt with the timing, and we're just looking at everything in context. We're speculating based on context. The context of everything feels like these guys feel like they don't have allies here anymore. And I'm going to give a personal example of someone I know who's not at the same level, but I know, there was a woman I knew who lived in Chicago, who was very prominent in the Pakistani Muslim community of Chicago. And she'd invited me to come do talks there as a filmmaker or whatever. A lot of rich people would show up at these talks, right, in the local community. And I could tell this woman was plugged in. She was a bit of a mover and shaker in that wealthy community in the Chicago area. And then there was a bit of a personal scandal. She had backed a particular figure who ended up being brought down by a scandal in the local community, right? And suddenly, I was like, oh, wow, okay. That was a bit of a big deal. And then 2 months later, I'm at a, social gathering here in Los Angeles, and there she is with her husband. I'm like, hey, wow, you guys visiting from Chicago? It's like, no, we moved here. They just sold their house and ran because they lost their social status in that community when they got involved in a scandal. They just fled.
Interesting.
They were top people who were hooked in. But the moment everyone's like, you can't come to our parties anymore. You were associated with this guy who was, brought in for that. You got to go. And they sold their home instantly and fled because they were so embarrassed. And that it struck me that I wouldn't sell my home. I mean, it's like, well, I'm sorry I was associated. I wasn't involved in their activities or whatever. But if someone's personal identity is based entirely on social status within a network, and the network closes you out, you flee. I've seen it with my own eyes.
That's exactly my point. That maybe she's just not going to be on the A-list Hollywood parties anymore, and she can't face that level of, if not shunning, then just being ignored and has decided to go ahead and move on to greener pastures, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, she may be upgrading to a bigger house. Who knows? Either way, I wish her no ill whatsoever.
No, I wanted to go off.
All I want is I just want the hurting to stop. That's all. I just want the abuse of Star Wars to stop.
Yeah, go do what you're good at. Be at the place where you're happy and the people that you're creating for are happy. Go do that, right? You know, this wasn't a good mix. This wasn't a good match over a decade. But whatever. But yeah, that's my instinct. Again, with the context of everything that's happening, you know, if I'd heard she sold a house in 2016, would I have cared or noticed? Probably not, right?
No.
She was at the height of her stuff at the time. But I noticed it now, and I do have a gut feeling that this isn't part of something bigger, and maybe that can lead it into, okay, well, there was other information that Sparrow gave about what happened on Friday, which also seems to bolster that something is happening.
Yeah, this was particularly interesting, and I was really gripped by this account when you sent it to me, Cameron. Apparently, U-Haul paid a visit.
U-Haul, you know,
U-Haul
is
metaphorically speaking.
U-Haul loves California. It does all of its work in California, right? It just people just back up and get out of it, right? They leave this state, they flee the state. Even, you know, government's I'm getting out of this beautiful state. I'm done, right? Thank you, Governor Newsom. God bless him. So U-Haul. So this is what happened. So this is the other news that happened now. So Sparrow, it took Sparrow a while to confirm the rumor in the office that she had been around on Tuesday, right? Because it was so controlled that, you know, I don't believe Sparrow saw them with their own eyes. And so they're like, but I keep hearing that this happened. So they had to take a while to confirm that this actually happened, that she came in on Tuesday, right? But this they were able to see with their own eyes, as others in the office were able to see. Apparently on Friday, moving companies came in and dropped off a very unusually large amount of moving boxes to pack up things into the Lucasfilm office. To the point, I mean, you know, people have cardboard boxes here and there. This was like a large haul of cardboard boxes and moving materials that were dropped off unexpectedly on Friday, to the point that the employees started saying, "What the hell's happening here?" You know, it had the feeling of like they're going to be packing up certain people's offices over the weekend, because it happened on a Friday, and that, you know, they're going to get them out, and they're just preparing for that move. And then this, Sparrow said, is just their speculation. And what some people, they cannot confirm this, so don't ever say I'm claiming this. Sparrow speculated, looking at the extent of the offices and with the context of hearing about this meeting and all this other stuff, Sparrow's like, I think this is to pack up Kennedy's office. That's my feeling. That's what their response, I think, is to pack her office up. Again, we're looking at the context of things. If she did have a meeting with a big boss, whether it's Iger himself or his minion, right, earlier this week, it does have the feeling of, all right, let's come to our terms of resolution, right? It has that feeling of, the image I had in my mind was the USS Missouri, you know, on the when the Japanese government surrendered, right? You know, it has that feeling of a formal meeting between Douglas MacArthur and the Japanese plenipotentiary, right, who comes onto the ship, right, and signs documents, right? It had that feeling of finality. And so what happens after that? Well, then you've got to now do the process of the occupation, right? Or in this case, the deoccupation of Lucasfilm, right? You got to do that process now. So if the meeting was, all right, so we need you out on this day, we've come to that understanding. She's like, well, look, I got all this stuff. I got to deal with all this stuff. I have 12, 13 years worth of stuff, you know, in the office, probably in various storage areas within the office, things like awards and other stuff, and maybe cool gadgets and gizmo things she's gotten from Star Wars over the years. So what do I do with this? They're like, all right, well, we'll call in U-Haul. And suddenly on Friday, U-Haul shows up with all these boxes, right? It kind of fits the, you know, the day after her house is suddenly put up for sale. It kind of fits the timing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Very, very interesting. Certainly those boxes wouldn't be for her personal move out of her house. They would have dumped it at the house. So, well,
the joke is, someone on my Patreon was joking, well, what if she like steals some of them to take them back to her house? And it's like, I was like, well, then I think the Witch King's going to send her a bill. Hey, you can't be appropriating Lucasfilm property like that. You got to pay for those boxes.
Oh my God. Hollywood is petty at times. There's no doubt about it.
They're being petty towards her because, you know, this is, and I ultimately believe all of this. If our interpretation is correct of what's happening here, it all goes back to that meeting that both of our sources confirmed, which is that meeting, which is the last we heard of her in power, where she sits down with Bob Iger and maybe Dana Walton and others, And Iger lays out all the failures of Lucasfilm. And instead of saying, yeah, you're right, I'm going to, fall on my sword, she said, well, look at all your failures, Bob. And she lists them, which is a mistake with the boss, especially in front of the employees, right? In front of his underlings, you don't do that. So I mean, it was the next day. It was the next day after that I first heard that her email had been taken control of, right? And so that's what happens when you try to embarrass the boss in front of his employees. That was her downfall moment. That was the one step too far. That was Pearl Harbor for her, right? And so since then, it's just been downhill to this point.
It sounds like things are really still shifting and jumping over at Lucasfilm, and we may know very soon if indeed it was her office that was packed up, or other people's offices, or God only knows.
Hopefully, we'll know.
It's an interesting, evolving story.
Well, and there's one more part of the story. So there was an addendum to that thing that does tell some people whose story we do seem to know has closed, which was Sparrow added, which is they were able to confirm that a certain Leslie Headland, has had her parking space revoked, and whatever the key access card or whatever they give to give you access to the building has been deactivated. So Ms. Headland apparently is not coming back ever to this. She's whatever her association was in this mystery, this enigma of the Acolyte, she ain't coming back, right? And so, so again, that leads to the question: what happened to the Acolyte, right? Because if she's no longer even have a parking space, then that show better be coming out next week, because there's nobody doing post-production on it, so it must be done, right? I mean, it must be done, right? I don't know. I mean, so, or maybe it's not ever going to be done. But we'll see.
I guess we'll see, but that is interesting. Leslie Headland is out. There, I don't know. Maybe those moving boxes are for her. That's also possible. Although I don't know that she had an office there. I think it was just that
she probably had right? All these places have like the visitor's office, right? When I was teaching at Penn State for a few months earlier this year, they had a standard like visitors faculty office that people come in and out of, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's possible.
Well, I'm trying to because people have said, well, why aren't the trades reporting this? That's a very fair question. It's 100% fair question, right? And guess what? I actually have contacts at the trades. I know people at Hollywood Reporter, Variety, right, at the Wrap. If anyone does any search on the internet, you'll find some of the the comments I've given to these trades in the past, like, and so I know people there. I have friends there. I went to school with some of them, and so I've been trying to get the trades to look into this, and it's been like a black hole. And like I keep telling my contacts, you got to look into this. And I'm telling you, something's happening at Lucasfilm. How is it that the YouTubers know? How is it that I know and you don't know? And they're like, yeah, we'll look into it, which suggests to me that there may be, there's literally a code of omerta around this, right? And the trades serve the system. But I will say this: I had a conversation. Again, timing this week. It was a conversation, I believe it was on Thursday. Yeah, it would have been around Thursday, I believe, with a journalist at the Hollywood Reporter. I know several people at the Hollywood Reporter. Is one of the reporters there, and we were talking about the strike, this ongoing strike, right? Which, God willing, I hope is lifted soon, because negotiations, thank God, have restarted. Thank God, right? And so they were talking to me about the strike, and after our long conversation on the strike, and that they were going to use me potentially as a source for one of the articles on the strike, I said, okay, before we go, I want to talk. I've tried to get your colleagues to look into this Lucasfilm thing. Are you aware something's happening at Lucas? Are you aware of this? And he's like, well, look, he's like basically like it's like the cone of silence there. He's like, do you have a contact that will talk to me? Because I can't get anyone to talk to me, right? No one, because that's the horsemen have put out. If you talk to the press, if you leak or you talk to the press, you are permanently fired. Right? I mean, everyone's essentially under a non-disclosure agreement that's just company-wide. You are done. You are done, and we're not going to tolerate that, because this is too crazy to put it out there. And so they're like, I can't talk to him. I was like, well, I've got a source, but he ain't going to talk to you, right? They're not going to. Sparrow ain't going to talk to the trades. It's not going to happen, right? And so I have a source to tell me, and they're like, well, but when I laid out what Sparrow had said and what you said and what I laid it out for the Hollywood, because I thought this person was going to say to me, all right, this just sounds like you crazy. You're hanging out with these YouTubers, Kamran, or whatever. Oh, you're all crazy, right? That's not what the journalist at the Hollywood Reporter said to me. He said, he laughed. He said, you know what? I can't confirm it because no one's talking to me, but that's perfectly believable to me. Something's happening. And he said, and he laughed. And this is an actual, I'm going to quote the journalist, right? The actual quote is like, all I know is, quote, he said, quote, all I know is Kathleen Kennedy is in the hottest seat in town. She's in trouble. End quote.
Oh, well, there we go.
But people get, why aren't the trades talking about it? Well, they know something's going on, but either they've been instructed to not look into it, or when they try to look into it, they're stonewalled, right? Because part of it is that what we do here, what you do especially, is a safe release valve, right? The system will implode if tomorrow Variety reports that Kathleen Kennedy's been through all of this, and that this was held quiet for weeks or even months, right? It will implode. It will cause a huge scandal about corruption in the system, right? About how whether the media is controlled. They can't ever let that narrative out. However, those who need to have that narrative out, whether it's our sources within the company that are fed up, or others who are allied with the removal of Kathleen Kennedy, they need people like Doomcock and hopefully maybe even people like me to put it out there, because the trades can't do it. They can't do it. They'll bring the whole system down.
That makes sense. That may be the title of this video. Kathleen Kennedy is in the hottest seat in town.
That's a good title. It's a great title, but it's a direct quote from a journalist at the trades who hasn't confirmed that any of this has happened. They can't confirm it. No one will talk to them, but they will say that it didn't surprise them. that this story were true, because it makes sense based on the fact that what they are hearing in the halls of the industry is she's toast. She's toast. That's what they're hearing. What does that mean? Well, you and I have our sources that are telling us what they think that means, but the system certainly has heard it.
On a very basic level, they heard it through the grapevine, and they can't talk about it, but it's common knowledge, and I find that strangely comforting. Kamran, thank you so much for speaking with us today, and please go ahead and plug your Patreon, patreon.com/Kamran Pasha. Great site.
It's a good site, and thank you. And yeah, just, and you always throw a link into it. Please come join Patreon. We're approaching 400 members. It's a great place. I talk a lot of more than just scoops. I give my reviews of movies and things. I give my inside information of how storytelling works. So I've got a lot of advice for that. You can do consulting with me if you're a screenwriter or a novelist, and I've done a couple of dozen now with people there where you come in and you do a consult with me through the Patreon. So come join me there. It's a great way to connect with me personally, and continue to support this incredible channel. Doomcock knows I don't really go much on YouTube anymore. I'm just focused on my work right now, or at least trying to get my work done with this strike handling. Hopefully have stuff for after the strike, but Doomcock is one of the few places that I could go to, and really it's because this is one of the great channels on YouTube. It's entertaining, it's fun, it's incredibly informative, and it's got a good heart at its center. Doomcock here, my friend, has a good heart, and not everyone in the system does. And so that's why I'm honored to be able to speak on this channel.
Thank you, Kamran Pasha. And from the center of the earth, this is Victor Van Doomcock and Kamran Pasha bidding you all, my friends, stay angry. Ha 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 ha.